Picture a physician in the Windy City who brings home a staggering $380,000 every year, driving a sleek leased BMW while her children attend the most prestigious private academies in the area. On the surface, she is the very image of the American success story, dining out at high-end restaurants nearly every night and maintaining a massive $4,200 monthly mortgage payment. Yet, despite this outward display of prosperity, she is fundamentally fragile. She cannot produce $5,000 in liquid cash for an unexpected emergency without selling off an asset or sinking deeper into a cycle of debt. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario or a single case of poor management, as a 2025 Goldman Sachs report highlights a startling reality where 41% of Americans earning between $300,000 and $500,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. Even more unbelievable is that 40% of those bringing home over $500,000 annually admit to having no financial buffer whatsoever. We often operate under the false assumption that a higher salary is the ultimate cure for financial anxiety, believing that once we hit six figures or pass that $500,000 milestone, money will simply become irrelevant. However, the actual data presents a jarringly different narrative, where those earning more in a single month than many families earn in a year are plagued by the exact same financial dread. What we are actually observing is a phenomenon known as the high-income poverty trap, a cycle where individuals earn more, immediately spend more, and continue to save absolutely nothing until they wake up at age 55 wondering where decades of high earnings vanished. This trap is indifferent to your gross salary. It focuses entirely on what you actually keep. It represents a financial pattern that snares millions of professionals who assume that a high status and a large paycheck automatically guarantee financial security. In a counterintuitive twist, research from 2025 suggests that Americans earning $100,000 a year are actually more likely to report living paycheck to paycheck than those earning only $50,000. Statistics show that 48% of those in the six-figure bracket feel they are living hand-to-mouth, and even among those earning over $200,000, 36% still feel they are running on a treadmill with no margin for error. Bank of America's analysis defines this state as spending more than 95% of total income on basic necessities, a category that now includes approximately 20% of households earning over $150,000. The people falling into this trap aren't incapable of doing basic math. They are often brilliant, highly educated experts in demanding fields who understand the theories of compound interest and retirement planning. The problem is that the trap is built on psychological triggers rather than simple arithmetic. As earnings grow, spending typically increases in a direct, almost invisible proportion through a process called lifestyle inflation. It starts small. A $15 lunch becomes a $25 lunch, a reliable Honda is replaced by a luxury German vehicle, and a perfectly functional apartment is traded for a sprawling house with guest rooms that are rarely occupied. Every single one of these incremental upgrades feels justified because you've worked hard and you can technically afford the monthly payment, but these costs compound over time while your actual savings remain stagnant. Once a luxury is integrated into your daily routine, the idea of downgrading starts to feel like a painful deprivation rather than just returning to a sensible baseline. When we look at the habits of actual millionaires, the reality is the polar opposite of the rich lifestyle we see on television. The famous study, The Millionaire Next Door, found that most people with $1 million net worth don't look wealthy at all. They live in standard neighborhoods, drive older, unpretentious cars, and rarely flaunt their status. In fact, 94% of millionaires reside in middle-class or modest areas, and more than 60% live in homes valued at less than $500,000. Even a titan like Warren Buffett continues to live in the Omaha house he purchased back in 1958 for just over $31,000. This creates a fascinating paradox where the people who are actually building lasting wealth behave nothing like the people who are merely appearing wealthy. A doctor in a leased BMW might look more successful than a plumber in a 10-year-old truck, but if that plumber has $2 million in investments and the doctor has zero, it is the plumber who is truly wealthy. To understand where you stand in this hierarchy, you can use a simple wealth-building formula. Multiply your age by your pre-tax annual household income and then divide that total by 10. That figure represents what your net worth should ideally be for someone in your circumstances. A 50-year-old earning $250,000 should have a roughly $1.25 million net worth. Most high earners fail this test spectacularly because they are under-accumulators of wealth, UAWs, choosing to consume their income rather than convert it into assets. This disconnect is driven by a massive gap in perception. While the median net worth of American households is approximately $193,000, many people believe they need $2.3 million to be considered wealthy and $839,000 just to feel comfortable. Because the goalposts for comfort and wealth keep moving further away, many people earning $400,000 still feel like they are falling behind, caught on a hedonic treadmill that requires them to run faster just to stay in the same place. This constant pursuit of a high-status lifestyle often leads to a heavy reliance on credit. High-income households earning over $100,000 carried an average credit card balance of $12,760 in 2025, with the top 20% of earners holding a disproportionate 35% of all U.S. credit card debt. The way credit is used changes as you move up the income scale. While lower-income families might use cards to survive when cash runs out, high-income earners often use credit to maintain a standard of living that leaves no room for mistakes. Total U.S. credit card debt has soared to an unprecedented $1.277 trillion, and nearly 36% of cardholders earning six figures or more are carrying a balance from one month to the next. For the majority of these people, this debt isn't a temporary hiccup, but has become a chronic condition lasting a year or longer. High earners are frequently caught in the fixed cost trap, which is perhaps the most dangerous part of the cycle. While a landlord might limit what you can rent on a $50,000 salary, a $300,000 income allows you to qualify for a massive mortgage that stretches your budget just as thin as the lower earners, just with much larger numbers involved. A family making $80,000 might spend $2,000 on housing, while the $300,000 earner spends $8,000. Both families end up with the same percentage of their income tied up in shelter, and both feel equally suffocated. The high earner simply has more expensive commitments, like private school tuitions, vacation home costs, and country club dues. These are seen as lifestyle requirements rather than luxuries, making them incredibly difficult to cut because doing so feels like a public admission of financial failure. The result is a personal savings rate that has plummeted to 3.6% as of late 2025, a far cry from the 33.8% peak seen during the pandemic when spending opportunities were limited. While high earners might save more in absolute dollars, their savings rates are often just as anemic as those earning far less because their spending scales perfectly with their raises. Real wealth accumulators, on the other hand, typically invest at least 15% of their annual income before they spend a single dime on necessities. They treat their savings as a non-negotiable expense. They pay themselves first. The difference between saving 4% and saving 15% over a 30-year career is the difference between a modest cushion and true financial freedom. This trap is further accelerated by social comparison, or what researchers call lifestyle creep, driven by the keeping up with the Joneses mentality. In the digital age, we're not just comparing ourselves to our neighbors, but to the curated, filtered highlights of the top 1% that we see on social media every day. This creates a bizarre dynamic where people in the top 5% of earners feel inadequate because they are comparing their real lives to the polished versions of people who might be even more leveraged than they are. We see this manifest in discretionary spending on small conveniences, like food delivery services, which saw a 10.2% increase in spending recently. While $179 a month on delivery might seem small, it adds up to over $2,148 a year. When you add in premium streaming services and ride shares, the total represents a significant amount of capital that vanishes without providing any lasting value. Geography plays a critical role, as coastal salaries are often completely negated by coastal prices. In cities like San Francisco, residents feel they need a net worth of $4.4 million to be considered wealthy, whereas the same $300,000 income that feels tight in Manhattan would provide a kingly lifestyle in a city like Kansas City. However, the most successful wealth builders understand that the path to $1 million is usually gradual and boring, taking an average of 28 years of consistent behavior. 79% of millionaires are self-made, and 73% of them never carried a credit card balance because they understood that compound interest should always work for them, not against them. Escaping this trap requires making choices that might feel uncomfortable, like admitting that the doctor making $380,000 could easily save $100,000 a year if she traded the BMW for a Honda or the nightly restaurants for home cooking. It's not about living in misery. It's about intention and recognizing the trade-offs we make every day. Breaking the cycle requires a thorough audit of every recurring expense, from unused memberships to excessive square footage, to see if they truly provide value proportional to their cost. The automation principle is the most effective tool for this. You must spend what is left after you save, rather than trying to save what is left after you spend.
The math is undeniable. An earner who saves 30% of a $300,000 income could accumulate $4 million over 20 years, while someone saving only 5% would end up with just $650,000. That $3.35 million gap is the true cost of being caught in the high-income poverty trap. Ultimately, we must realize that a $200,000 income with a 30% savings rate builds wealth significantly faster than a $400,000 income with a 5% rate. More money was never the final answer. The only thing that matters is the intentional choice of what you decide to keep.